equality, searching for freedom inside a destined reality.
Construct mentality, street-driven salary, spoken flow, poetry, divine principality, raised on straight block.
How do we get it back? How do we take control of the art that we created?
The art, key word being art. Think about those, I mean, the thing is anything trendy is temporary. It doesn't build to last. Any of us who ever hear the first three notes of wow, 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 and you start thinking about Let's Get It On. That's a 30-year-old song by Marvin Gaye because it was written to last the length of time because it was true to the art. But when you're making an album every 3 months, you're just in it for the money. And the key thing is those who are behind you, pushing you to do that, they're benefiting from it. The Jimmy Ivans of the world, the Tommy Mottolas of the world, have never sung a note, never wrote a beat, and they're getting to be multi-billionaires at the expense of running their slave cartel, which is the new group of rappers, because they will do anything for money.
The most important element in this is do for self.
Go ahead.
There's nothing like doing for self. And we've been stripped of that, of the ability to do for self for so long that we accept somebody else controlling us, being blind to it because it exists so much in our lives and our society. And innovation in life, like for example, when someone begins to put forth effort and independence, that becomes something that we become blind to and we no longer respect it. Because we're so used to being controlled, when someone steps out on their own and control their own destiny, they become outside our peripheral. That's been the problem within our community, within the black community, and particularly when it comes to this music culture. Someone else is controlling our music culture and putting out there what is acceptable music, what is not acceptable music, what will be on the radio, what our children will hear. That level of control needs to be combated with doing for ourselves. We look at individuals like Cash Money, Master P, all these various individuals who were successful at stepping into the arena of doing something for themselves independently while yet being in cahoots with the devil, so to speak, but yet at the same time being able to exercise a measure of independence and control over their own music. Then it becomes a question of responsibility. If you have the ability and the power to exercise independence doing for self, now it becomes a matter of choice. What decision are you going to make to put out there? Are you going to allow to put out there what they want you to put out there, or what you've effectively shown that you have the ability to put out there through your own strength and independence of doing for self? That's right. That's where it begins at. We're breaking the controls we have to do for self and then make the conscious decision to make and put the right music out there for our community, for our culture, for the art.
Do you see, or do you know, or do you feel that the young people that are involved in that culture, in that so-called hip-hop culture, you feel they're educated to what's really happening to them, and what's to the hand? Do they see the hand that's over them, or are they educated to it, or do they even care? They just want to get paid.
I think that there's so much ignorance, in our culture today. And when speaking on the issue of the music and the artists, the promoters, the industry, everybody involved with it, everybody is kind of like in a la-la land world. It's a dream world. It's a fascination world. This is the reason why videos is nothing but a script. The video to a hot song, a rap video, R&B, whatever, it's a script. And it's well scripted. And the people that are the artists, they're not the ones writing the scripts. They're not the ones directing the video. It's not their inspiration. And see, that's where our breakdown is at with our youth that are getting involved with music, that are getting involved in any level of influential culture. They're not the directors. We're not training them. We're not raising them up as young youth, letting them know that you're going to go out to the world as leaders, as contributors, and not just necessarily puppets. So no, there's too much ignorance with our young hip-hop generation. Nobody knows what's going on with the industry. Nobody knows how it's controlled, the distribution of music, points, payments, royalties, contracts. It's not enough of that. It's not enough education. Like I say, it's a dream world. We're living in la-la land and somebody else is writing the script and somebody else is directing, and we're not involved with that process.
Think about hip-hop. Hip-hop is not a phrase we coined. It was called rap. It was rap in the black community. Anytime we start something and it tends to be a profitable industry, The enemy to our rise is to take over it and give it a new name and a new culture and take it into a totally different direction. Rap music, as I know, is showing my youth again. I remember the Cold Crush Brothers, Grandmaster Flash, Treacherous 3. I'm talking about people who just rap for the sake of rapping, and the key to rap then was just showing my mic skills. I had to be better than you. And then we showcased our DJ. It never got into an East Coast, West Coast fight. It never got into death and pestilence in our community. It wasn't until those people who benefit from us rapping, you know, you got these, the A&Rs used to be young 17, 18-year-old college students, black, that took a group like Sin City or our brother Hakim and promoted them, made a name for them, and started pressing their music in the basement of their apartment or their home. Then when it became a multi-million-dollar business, then the powers that be started looking at it, and they started putting 50 and 60-year-old white men over it, and that's when it became battle rap, and that's when you started getting these guys that's coming along, agitating. You know, Brother Sin said something about you. Now you make a rap record dissing him, and then his people are telling him to diss Brother Hakim. Now it becomes not them two battling, but their camps start to battle. You get the zealots of their camps, the hanger-ons, who create it to be a negative industry. Yes, music is very influential. Chuck D said it best. He said, rap music is the CNN of the black community. Because at that time, rap music was a mere reflection of what was going on in our community. And we were able to look at that in a harmless way, because you had comical rappers, you had serious rappers, you had the gangster rappers that didn't lead to violence. You know, so then you start getting those type of things. It is a worldwide phenomenon. You could go on YouTube and you'll see people rapping in Chinese, rapping in Arabic. It is a worldwide phenomenon that is making multi-billion dollars. Now that's when it takes the notice of those who benefit from it. Then that's when they start directing it and controlling it. And that's what's happening, because they're controlling our community inadvertently by raising up those who are speaking violence, speaking against the black woman. And they're speaking negative against one another. They're using the N word religiously, they're using the B word religiously, and things like that. And it's controlled by someone who will never ever step foot on your or my block. They living in the hills of Hollywood, making multi-billion dollars and putting a face in front of you who is making a few $100,000 and making him the big man in your eye and making you impatient to be able to gain that same material wealth. So you start trying to speed up the process by doing things that are illegal. And they think that that big house comes with the music, but that house is rented for my video, his video, and the car is rented for each of our videos. But the thing is, it's a synthetic world, and it's controlled just like the Matrix.
I want to kind of look at the broader impact of the hip-hop community. So with that in mind, what responsibility does the so-called hip-hop community have to make a change for the better in the community?
Back in 2001, I wrote a book called Hip Hop 101, exploring the art, politics, and science of hip hop. In that book, I made the point and assertion that what is considered hip hop by appellation or by definition is the new youth generation, the new youth culture that came to rise in the late 70s, early 80s, in which we began to see the musical side of hip-hop. And the assertion that I made was that hip-hop in itself was but urban black culture. If you read the book, The Philadelphia Negro by W.E.B. Du Bois, he made some observations based on blacks' migrations from the South to the North. And in that book, he was able to analyze and show the various evolutions. And one of those particular evolutions is the evolution within our community of the word, right? Whether it be through music, through poetry, through oratory, through ministry, the word. In the late 70s, something transpired in New York that gave rise to the musical generation, what we now call hip-hop, that we as a current generation, whether we are older generation or younger generation, that we lack the perspective to understand that today's young culture, this new youth urban culture, has so many different multifaceted influences and origins, so to speak, and that through the power of the word, And in this case, it has to be hip-hop, that the responsibility exists. Because your original question is, what responsibility do the people within hip-hop have to make the change? This particular new generation, the generation I come from, this hip-hop generation that we call hip-hop, we have the responsibility upon us to make the change. The responsibility is not only, individually, but it's collective. And I think that the problem is that we fail to understand the current generation, the current culture, what shaped it, what gave rise to it, in order to be able to treat the disease. If you don't know a disease's pathology, if you don't understand the pathology of it, then you can never begin to just jump inside a patient and say, okay, well, this is now gone wrong, so let me treat this. But within the pathology of a disease, a lot of things happen if it goes untreated. The pathology of the disease within hip-hop and the negativity, etc., it's gone so many decades that you can't just jump in it and then fix it. You have to go back to the origins, study the origins to understand it. And that's why I think our responsibility is that we have to go back and then re-educate our community about our culture, about this generation that exists today, the negativity, the positivity, where it can go, where it came from, etc.
Some hip-hop artists, they look at things from a perspective of, okay, it's the fact that I made it. That's the inspiration itself. Now, it is, but it isn't. Because on the back end, when you press play on the music and everything, it might not necessarily be the most inspirational thing. And the responsibility of the hip-hop community, well, it's bigger than just actually the hip-hop community. I think that we have lost the sense of actually just being a community in general. Everybody's so much into their own thing now. You're seeing so much divide and conquer, not only in hip-hop, but you're seeing it so much in hip-hop because it's coming from the streets. It's coming from the streets. You're seeing people that are a lot more selfish, a lot more, I'm gonna just do me, you do you, and things like that. What we need to do better in the hip-hop community is a sense of unity. That's why I started my event, Mic Club. And since I've started that event and everything, a lot of infighting, which is always bad for business on any level, a lot of the infighting has went way down. These brothers are doing songs together. They're kind of figuring out the 90% of the game, which is business, and the 10% is your talent. So, with that being said, it's just our responsibility actually is to, each one teach one pretty much. But we don't really do that enough because we're so busy telling our own story. There's nothing wrong with that. But as long as you can reach back and everything and grab one of their hands and, teach them something, tell them something, be it song, be it physically, in some way, I feel like, that person, said person is doing their what they're supposed to do. That's how I feel about it. Well, I like to say these people aren't really leaders. You know what I mean? They're playing a part of a movement that they have no clue about.
What are we going to do to make sure that the influence that is taking place is more positive, more constructive than the negative?
Lack of God there. They cuss and filth and filth and filth. Then they win that Grammy, want to thank God. And they curse through the whole darn song. There's not a love for God. If they get back to the love of God, God would take care of them. They would not have to worry about their white slave master, who is really their producer, taking care of them anymore. They would know that it's only God, and God alone is the only one who can take care of them.
So hence the title, Put On the New Man, meaning put on a new mentality. Don't think like you thought before you came in here. Don't think like you thought last year. Don't think like your parents thought, because they had time to think the way they were thinking. But if we're living at the end of the world, we don't have time to think about the old world. We have to prepare ourselves for the new world that's coming in.
Trying to find the dream, searching in life for the reality of freedom. Our times have been wasted, we've been climbing the mountaintops. We've been searching for freedom inside a time of inequality, searching for freedom inside a destined reality.
Construct mentality.